in session. If you call the order. Yep.
Mrs. Shepherd? Mrs. DeNeno?
Present.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Holton?
Here.
Mrs. Burdick? Ms. Redding? And Chairman Yim.
Here. Okay, next thing on the agenda, approval of minutes from April 8th, 2014. Any discussion? Motion?
I'll make a move to approve.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody in the audience that has something that they would like to contribute, now is your opportunity to come up and speak.
Well, I didn't know I was going to speak, but I will.
What the heck? Just tell them what you're doing and tell them
State your name and address, please.
I'm trying to remember what was in the minutes regarding, I think you had questions. And
State his name and address, please.
First, my name is Jim Wells. I'm the president of the Vero Beach Dog Exercise Area, Inc., DBA, the Vero Dog Park.
We also need your address.
Pardon?
Your
yes,
address.
I'm coming up with that. It's 2180 Dunmore Lane, Vero Beach, 32963.
Thank you.
Just give them a status on where you are right now.
Pardon?
Just give them a status on where you are right now.
The status of where we are right now is we have a lease, a 10-year lease. It was effective March 15th. We are associated with the Indian River Community Foundation as our fiscal partnering agent. And we have a site plan, and we have funds in the bank or in the foundation rather, to kick off the first phase, which is the primary part of the fence, which we've been trying to get for 5 years. And so we're now at the stage of submitting the site plan to the Planning and Zoning Committee. After I gather we need your approval and the Marine Commission approval, and who else do we need? I guess that's it.
might be it.
I think it's just those three before the city council.
Last but not least, we need the city council. So that's essentially where we're at the moment.
So what are you going to bring before us, a site plan or what?
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I had a misunderstanding. I thought you had questions.
No, well, we do, and that's a question. He needs to get on our calendar to present the site plan.
Okay.
And I know the Planning and Zoning Commission's going to meet with that group on I think it's Tuesday, June 6th.
Right.
Now,
June 7th, I think it is. Sure. No, I'm sorry.
maybe
That's
June 5th.
We're on the Marine Commission for July 7th. That's it.
Yeah. They're going to go to the commission. They're going to meet with the Planning and Zoning Commission the week before the normal Recreation Commission.
In June?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So is there anything?
I have no problem.
Yep.
Okay, so can we get them on our calendar next month?
Sure.
Okay, being June. What's the date for that?
June
10th?
10th.
Right. Okay, and now that Jim's in the room, the only question that I had is this new requirement on the dog park people to improve the road.
Road.
Uh-huh.
Actually, it's not a road improvement, it's parking, and there's some issue about having ADA parking on the thing. That would be the real concern. And I think the discussion that we've had, I have not been directly involved, was that we would give time for that. First, the fencing, I think, is the first project that you all have, and then we would go another 12 months before we would have to have some type of handicap parking or something in there.
I'm looking at something that came to the dog park people, and what it said was if we're going to retain the parking, they need to improve the whole parking area to a durable surface.
Right, but initially would be handicap, and then eventually the facility's going to need parking. You can't just
park the way we've been parking.
That's right, because you're now building a facility. So it's a little different than the way you're parking now. Anybody can walk and go across there. But if you're going to build a facility, which I think is the ultimate goal here, then you're going to have to designate some parking because you're going to have people coming into a facility. It's not just an open field.
So what are we going to get a site plan for?
Site plan, as my understanding, is going to be the fencing, but that's
For the
the part
park
that they're
proper.
doing. And then they will have an area that will ultimately be parking designated in there.
All right, so say it to me again. After they put up after they get the site plan approved and they install the fencing and landscaping, then they get an additional year to deal with the parking?
Yeah, I think a year was what, is my understanding, is what was being discussed. Now, again, I have not been part of that conversation, but what's feedback to me was that there would be time given, but the emphasis would be primarily on handicap parking as the first installment of parking, but ultimately there would have to be some parking facility there for the users of the park.
So my understanding was that we were expected to pay for the parking improvement, which wasn't originally
In the lease.
lease negotiation, as I recall.
Well, but nothing was really in there because the lease negotiations said a site plan would be approved and the city would have to approve a site plan. I don't think, I mean, we described the legal description of the site that's in the lease, because that's what you're leasing. And then we said, and I believe what was said in the lease, is the city would have approval of all site plans, and that approval would be what our requirements would be. And one of those requirements is there's going to have to be some type of parking furnished for a facility in that area.
Okay, so to clarify, is this parking improvement, does that need to be in the site plan that's going to come here next month?
Well, I think in the site plan, they ought to designate an area that's going to be for parking, because if you put a fence around everything, then there is no outside area. What we need to do is show that there is going to be.
We have that already in the site plan. I guess you probably maybe we haven't gotten it to you yet, though, because it just got, Tim and Gary just went over it the other day.
Yeah, I have not been involved in the site plan. The issues that came up was the fencing, and my thing was we wanted to make sure that we weren't fencing all the way across the back where the mangroves, and that it's my understanding it's going to go across the 40-foot easement. We'll have a gate there. And the parking issue came up as if you're going to build a facility, ADA requires at least handicap parking, but we needed to designate somewhere on there that fencing wouldn't incorporate all of the site, and there would be eventually some parking put in there. But our thing is over time, try to get a parking requirements for at least the minimum of the, and again, it doesn't have to be asphalt, it has to be a durable surface, which can be
Well, I think there was a big misunderstanding, and hopefully clarified, because I think our board thought we were going to be required to pay for somewhere in the area of $20,000 was our estimate based on our landscape architect to do the durable surface and improve the parking area before we even could start on the fence, and that would have really handicapped our fundraising, I think.
Right. So it's not that. They have a year.
That we will give we'll give them a year to do the parking. We just need a commitment there's parking going to be provided for the facility as it goes in. Because
I'll send
it's.
you a copy of the latest site plan that shows that.
Okay, and then you'll bring it here next month. Okay, well, I'm glad.
Yeah, because Tim will have to review it. Tim and the Public Works Department review all site plans. And I believe it's going to come to you all. It goes to the Marine Commission because they have impact.
I gather from what Robin Polinsky told me, he has approved that subject to, he has no more
Issues.
revisions to make on it as we submitted it. So I gather it's then just going before the P&Z.
It goes to P&Z. But I presume somewhere along that you do have parking in there somewhere on the site plan. Okay.
I've got it here, but it's so small you can't see.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So that's better, yeah. It gives you some breathing time.
It's much better.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives you time to. The theory, again, the conversations. The theory is once you get the fence up, then hopefully your fundraising is going to be a little easier because then they will see a facility's going in.
Exactly.
But we want to put a priority on the parking part of this as opposed to something else somebody may dream up. So we.
Okay.
That's
a great relief because everybody was misunderstood. I think that we were going to. It was contingent upon first improving the parking lot, and that's $20,000.
Yeah, we can work on that.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
Before you go, Jim,
Anything else for?
well, the question, because apparently I think the site plan was just an open issue. Then
Under the lease, the site plan was, the lease just refers to that any and all improvements and site plan approvals would have to be obtained through the city.
I understand that, but when do you come to finite? These are the final requirements.
Right now, there are no requirements. You could leave the place just like it is now. The site plan, and we don't have a requirement other than if you're going to do a facility, then parking has to be accommodated. We don't have any other requirements. I mean, there's nothing. Now, if they come in and they're going to build a structure, for example, if they're going to build something that would house the animals or have people, then you have to go and get building permits for that. That would have to be accommodated. We are looking into, for example, water was another issue, and extending of water lines will be done through the utilities, and I think we can work through that issue, but it's not really a requirement. We don't require them to have water at the site.
I think what I'm hearing is that any time you make an improvement, it has to come back through a site plan.
A major improvement. Again, running a water line would not have to come back as a site plan, unless, of course, they're going to put a structure in for that.
But we're defining like the fence.
The fence is a structure.
Okay.
That has to come through.
The landscaping, is that a structure?
No, landscaping it should be part of the site plan, what they're doing, but if they want to put trees out in that area, I don't think they'd have to bring every tree back to anybody for review. But if they are going to, again, build a shelter, they would. But the planting of trees are not, because I think they're addressed in the lease as well, that, they stay with the property afterwards.
Well, if we do put in trees, we'll need irrigation too, so that's another.
But that really wouldn't be a site plan issue. That would be the utility, so that's not really a site plan thing. Again, it's...
Well, this picture that was just passed around, this is like a permanent improvement. The entrance?
Yes, sir. That has to be a site plan approval.
So that would come back as a separate site plan approval?
I think it'll be in the initial site plan.
Initially, it'll just be the fence that entrance plazas later, phase 2 probably.
Well, is it going to be in your initial submittal of your site plan?
No.
No.
So no. So it'll have to come back.
That was the architect's rendering of a conceptual.
I understand.
Yes, that would have to come back. Because the only thing you're approving right now in a site plan are structural improvements, i.e. a fence, a parking lot, something like that would have to be approved for architectural design and any other
So
thing.
you can't present that as phase 2 of this plan? I mean, you want to actually have to go through all these hoops again?
You don't want to get yourself in a hole, because if you present that with that design, that's what's approved. If you change that design, for example, if you don't raise enough money for that, then you're going to have to bring it back anyway, because, for example, instead of having a pitch roof, you have a flat roof or something, that changes substantially your site plan.
Okay.
How long is a site plan good for? 2 years or something like that?
Yeah, there's a time that you have to get started on it. And if you substantially complete, then you have more time after that. And I don't know what those dates are.
All right, that's all I have. Anybody have any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our new business, Dodgertown Golf Course. Mr. Swenson.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Eric Swenson. I live here in Vero Beach, 465 38th Square Southwest, Vero Beach, Florida, 32968. Coming to the town, or to the meeting today, to request the open a golf practice facility as well as a disc golf or frisbee golf facility on the site of historic Dodgertown, or the old Dodgertown Golf Course. It's going to be a semi-automated golf practice facility. I'm looking at about 15 hitting stations, a mix of grass as well as automated tee stations. I also want to have an 18-hole disc golf course. It's going to be up more towards 26th Street. I'd like to be open about 300 days per year from 10 a.m. to dusk. The City of Vero Beach residents and visitors will gain new and exciting recreational activities that are not currently available within the city. Disc golf is an environmentally sound sport. It's played all year round in most climates, especially Florida, and it's enjoyed immediately, even by beginners of all ages. For the practice range, I'm looking at utilizing the area south of the existing clubhouse It's a very wide property. You're looking at about almost 1,000 feet. I'm trying to maximize the tee locations and the targets downrange so you can minimize any potential stray balls approaching 43rd Avenue or Hallman Stadium. Again, the disc golf course, I'm looking on the northern portion of the property. It would be both east and west of the current clubhouse, but it would still be north of where the driving range would be. The installation of the 18-hole disc golf course and the golf practice range will include the construction of some tee boxes, as well as installation of signs, baskets, and targets. Some foliage could be planted or relocated to help with the design of the actual disc golf course, and then a few trees would be trimmed or possibly removed if they have diseases, down the center of the property for the golf practice facility. I'm looking to get a 5-year lease. I know the facility next door has a 5-year lease, and I believe they are re-signing it this month if they have not already done so. I love Vero Beach, and I want to have more recreational opportunities for our kids and our older people. I don't want to stand in the way of any comprehensive plans such as, a conference center, hotel complex going in the future. I'd be totally fine with vacating the property. One thing I would be concerned with, though, is the improvements that I put in. I would like to have some way to possibly recoup that if, this property does sell and a big development goes in, whatever's to the benefit of the city. So again, I'd like to have a 5-year lease. I'd like to have the ability to renew that. I do plan on making some significant capital improvements to the property. What I would like to start off by doing would provide a new bathroom access to the facility. The recreation department currently stores a lot of their equipment there. I don't want to interfere with that, but I'd like to access a bathroom, so I'll be putting a hole in the east side of the building to have access to one of the bathrooms. My home base for operations would be on the covered porch right there, so I would still be outside the facility. I probably would need to run some new electrical lines and have a golf ball dispenser on the porch. I would also like to use part of the recreation storage side. If you haven't been out there, there's 2 garage doors on each side on the northern part of the property. But I'd like to store 1 mower there, as well as my golf cart with the picker attachment to pick up the golf balls. For allowing me to use a small portion of the garage and the covered porch, I'm offering to pay all electric for the building, mow all of the areas in use, and maintain the exterior of the building. In the future, if the City of Vero Beach Recreation Department no longer needs the clubhouse for storage, I would like the opportunity to open like a limited grill and a pro shop inside the facility. I would like to operate a family-friendly recreational facility to benefit city residents, employees, and visitors. I would like the ability to run leagues, clinics, events, and tournaments, and I will secure any necessary permits, insurance coverage that is needed for these activities. Much of the area of the proposed course is currently underutilized and not highly maintained. The installation of a disc golf course in Vero Beach would benefit the surrounding community by increasing and enhancing recreational opportunities and conservation goals while saving somewhere, I believe, around $20,000 to $30,000 a year the city is currently spending to maintain the property as it is. I think you have copies of what I was looking to do as far as the building, just to give you an idea of where the ball dispenser would be, where the bathroom access would be.
Now, is this still the property that we were talking about previously along 43rd Avenue, or does this encompass the original golf course property as well?
This is where the current clubhouse is, the same property I believe American Golf was requesting to open a similar type range.
Okay.
Eric, will you let them know also about balls and distance and how you are able to? You can. Well,
there's a couple different options. If the concern is the distance these balls are going to go, you can buy limited flight balls, and then you just adjust the yardage accordingly. So if it's only going 80 yards down range, but it's a limited flight ball, you might tell people that it's flying like 100 yards. But again, it's a very wide property, so I would like to strategically locate the tee stations in the middle of the property as much as possible, where you would still have a minimum of probably 130 yards to the right before you approach 43rd Avenue. 130 yards to the left before you get towards Hallman Stadium. And straight ahead, you're hitting 300 yards before you come into, anything. The new Cloverleaf facility would be downrange to the left, and to hit the retention pond there, you'd be flying about 250 yards. That's a very, very long shot.
Will there be evening hours?
There's no lights on the property, so I would be planning to close at dusk.
I think one of our original problems would it interfere with that clover leaf over there?
No.
But you're saying that they couldn't hit the ball that far.
I know I definitely couldn't hit a ball that far. I don't think anyone here could. Again, it's a very long distance, and just to get to that retention pond is about 250 yards. To get over the outfield fence, you would still need to carry probably another 30 or 40 yards. So to even land on the warning track, you're probably looking at about a 300-yard carry. That's extremely long. So I could use limited range golf balls if that was a problem. Again, I wanted to orientate the hitting station so you could maximize the use downrange. And that's, again, too, where it gets into the targets. You know, the things that you put out there for people to aim and shoot at, that's why you want to concentrate them down the middle. Of course, you probably will have some stray balls. But, again, if somebody hits a really, really bad shot, if it goes 30 yards straight and then it still has to hook or slice 130 yards to the right or left before you get into trouble. And there are trees that line 43rd. There is a fence that already surrounds the Hallman Stadium.
So this is kind of a two-part thing. I mean, you've got a driving range for regular golf balls, and then you've got the course for the disc.
Yes. Frisbee golf, as it's commonly known, disc golf is the preferred name. It's a very popular sport, especially in the Northeast. I came down from Northern Virginia in 2004, so I never got a chance to play on the existing golf course, and then it closed. There aren't any recreational facilities like that around here. There's a couple baskets somewhere down Old Dixie and Fort Pierce that you can play on, but it's a very nice, easy sport. It doesn't cost a lot of money. You know, you can buy a Frisbee for $10 or $15, or I'll rent one for $1. It's got a limited impact. It gets kids motivated. It gets them exercising. They also get to work on some of their reasoning skills. They have to decide, you know, how they want to approach the shot. There's a lot of skill, you know, that goes into it.
What do they throw it into?
It's a Frisbee.
No, I know, but where?
The way it stands is there's a think of a metal pole that has chain links hanging down, and what those chains do is when the Frisbee hits it, it stops the Frisbee and it drops in a basket. So it's very similar to golf. You have a tee box. You might have targets where you have to go around the right of a tree or the left of the tree to make it interesting, but the goal is to land it in the basket. If it hits the basket and falls on the ground, then you have to putt again. And these, you can actually have tournaments. They're very popular along the East Coast for Frisbee golf, and that's something that we could bring out people, you know, from out of town in to visit. And again, it's a recreational activity that really doesn't have a lot of expense with it, and it gets people outdoors and exercising.
I think it's a great idea. The kids need something around here.
Great addition to Jeff's sports camp.
How much of the acreage for Frisbee and how much for a regular
Okay.
driving range?
The entire property is roughly 35 acres, I believe, after the land swap with the county. It's divided into 3 parcels. So if I am out in the field and I'm looking at the clubhouse, 43rd Avenue is to my left, there's a parcel to the right where I'd like to have the hitting stations, so that includes the clubhouse. To the left is a second parcel. So I think the top half of those 2 parcels is maybe about 5 acres or so. You know, because Frisbee golf, you can't throw a Frisbee as far as you can hit a golf ball. You're looking at something about 30 to maybe 70 yards on average for a hole. It could be shorter, it could be longer, but that's about average. These are special Frisbees. They're designed to fly a little farther. And believe it or not, you'll see these professionals walking around with a whole bag. They have putters, they have drivers, they have mid-range, they have ones that go to the right, Frisbees that go to the left. It gets very involved when you...
I'd like to ask Mr. O'Connor, now what is the city's position on returning him money should you sell the property to reimburse him for what he's put in the property?
We have no problem. We have leases. Many of our leases have a clause where we have the buyout at a depreciated value of the investment put into the site. So that's not an uncommon issue for us. But it's typically the depreciated value over the time. And at the end, if it is a 5-year lease, then there is no payback. The value reverts to the city if we choose to terminate the lease at that time. But whatever the term is, then any asset, it becomes an asset of the city, or the city can require the asset to be removed from the facility.
Okay. And Rob, what is he looking for us today? A motion to recommend it to the city council?
Approve the concept.
Okay. I move that we approve the concept of the golf facility off of the Dodgertown property.
I'll second that.
Second that.
Thank you.
just to make sure everybody knows, now you're approving a concept here, so there's a lot of details that will have to be worked out, and before it goes to City Council, hopefully we will have those details. For example, the insurance and some of
Well,
these
the
other
city
things.
attorney will do that, right?
Yes, the city attorney works out the final lease agreement and the documents to go along with that.
Okay.
That need to come back before us.
If you wish, we can do that however you want to do it. The terms and conditions, again, what we will be striving for is to get the driving range and disc golf, and that's, if that's the concept. If you're not concerned about the verbiage of the lease, then it wouldn't have to, but if you want
I
us
think
to...
the question I have is, are you aware of what the city costs are going to be?
Or as far as insurance purposes, or?
Well, I don't know, whatever they're going to throw into the lease.
Well, we have the liability coverage, obviously, holding us harmless, and then we have we're named insured in the policy itself. And then I'm not sure we've talked about what the lease payment would be on how we would work that out. I think we had worked through the other driving range, and I presume we'd be somewhere in that same neighborhood. But we'd be very happy to bring the lease back after we do that, if that's what you all wish to do.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Okay, we can work out the details. And
It'd be nice to see a developed concept.
well, from my standpoint, it'd really be nice to have you all approve the lease when it goes to City Council. Then I don't have to rewrite the whole thing again. So,
Any other questions? All right, so once you work out the lease, it comes back to us.
Okay, all right, thank you for your time.
Move it forward. Thank you.
That's a very interesting offer.
What happened to that other group? Did they just go away?
The what?
They evaporated. The other people that were...
Yes.
They just went away?
We've had two or
They
three
just
different
couldn't do
people
it.
make presentations.
They weren't able to work it out.
So that's why I'm asking them to come back, because once you get down and really start nuts and bolts, and things change.
Do we have to vote on the motion to approve the concept to
You
the?
get a second?
Yep. Two of them.
3 of them, actually. Craig,
Yeah, we
too.
do. But we have conflicting things now. We can vote on your motion, but then the following, what came after your motion. If you want to
Let me
amend it and
let me
rescind it.
restate the motion. I make a motion that we accept the concept as presented today and have him come back with the lease for our approval.
You agree to that?
That sounds good.
Okay. Judy?
On board.
Greg?
Yes.
You on board? All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, opposed? It's an easy way to resolve that.
It's a great concept.
Okay. Budget discussion. This may take longer than 30 minutes, depending on how much we want to get into it. My suggestion is at 5 o'clock, if we're not close to wrapping it up, we just carry it over to next month,
That's good.
rather than trying to push things.
Is that okay with you, Rob? Does that put you in a bind? Okay.
Makes it easier for you, doesn't it? I say it makes it easier for you.
Sure. Just to let you all know, I just watched Cindy Lawson, who's the finance director, speak with the Finance Commission last week and really did a nice job, very commendable job of presenting some thoughts regarding the budget and the budget going forward, and their input, the Finance Commission input, was really, really good to see. If you get a chance to watch that, there was a lot of information on the Recreation Department, and with it being an enterprise fund versus a general fund and all that discussion was really interesting. Moving on to our budget that we proposed, one of the things that was brought...
Let me interrupt you right away.
Yes, go ahead.
Since I didn't see it.
Okay.
Because we've had this question of whether or not it stays an enterprise fund.
There was a serious discussion regarding that, and I think it's just one of those things for basically what Cindy was saying is just something for the Finance Commission to kind of ponder and look at and maybe reevaluate that. I'll let Jim bring it up, but the bottom line was it was a really good discussion.
Certainly was, and I think it'd be appropriate for the Recreation Commission to weigh in on that. The issue really comes down is that an enterprise fund theoretically makes and generates at least the majority of the dollars necessary to operate the enterprise, i.e., you've got the marina, you've got water and sewer, you've got electric. All of those enterprises have rates and fees that meet, if not all of their budget, the great majority of their budget, so therefore it's very easy to define. When we had our audit this year, our auditors brought up the issue that we have recreation as an enterprise fund. Fees don't even come close considering what has to be contributed by general fund. Now, we tried to fix that a couple years ago, and when the auditors also talked about it at that time, and we took the maintenance of parks and facilities out of the Parks and Recreation budget and put those in general fund. And then you all did some fees and rate adjustments trying to get closer. But I'm not sure we're ever going to get over the 50% mark, at the rate, in my lifetime anyway, let's put it that way. And so it's really a challenge. So the auditors sort of made a little note of that, and Cindy was responding on some of the comments that she had had with the auditors while they've been around City Hall, and bring it up to the Finance Commission that maybe we need to look at it and recreation no longer be an enterprise fund unless somebody has some idea of how it's going to work. Some of the debate that took place in that discussion, and some of the Finance Commission members' concerns were, well, if you take it in not an enterprise fund, then when there are the fees and charges associated with the recreation, they go directly to general fund. They're no longer designated for those activities. That doesn't mean that if you create a foundation, now that would be designated for activities because but the foundation would be independent of the city. But any fees collected at the tennis or at the swimming pool, if you're not an enterprise fund, goes into the general fund. Now, those numbers can be pulled out, and it would be very simple for somebody to see the amount of money raised and the amount of money spent. So it's not that it's hidden from anything. It's just that it's not directly proportioned to any operation within the recreation. And part of the discussion came up was like the police department. The police department, believe it or not, raises funds, but they come very far short of $6 million. So they obviously are part of general fund. And so in the fact that you all became part of the general fund, those fees again would be treated similar to what the police department. We don't associate parking fees with the operation of the police department.
Cindy came in while you were talking.
Oh, she did? Okay. She'll allow me to speak. Yeah. But yeah, she can definitely speak to it much better than I, but that was sort of the discussion, as Rob said. I thought it was a very appropriate discussion at the time. I think it was something that has come up, and for the 3 years I've been here, and Cindy and I have been, sort of wrestling with this at every budget season. And we were sort of hoping we'd get it a little bit up over the hill, but I'm just not sure that that's going to occur.
Well, you said you thought we may want to take a look at it, and I think that's... I was aware of all this discussion going on, 10, 15 years ago even.
Yeah, nothing ever dies around here. We just sort of picked up the mantle and carried it forward. But we're sort of looking for a conclusion, believe it or not. And I know that's hard to take, but it's...
Well, I mean, how difficult is it to, if you want to come up, Cindy?
Yeah, again, she's much more of an authority than I am, so...
Well, I don't want to preempt you, but...
No, and I didn't either. It's not that difficult to do in terms of budgeting it properly. Essentially what would happen is if you've seen our general fund budget, the recreation department would still be a separate department. I mean, you would be able to see all the same expenditures you see in that other fund as a segregated department within the general fund. The revenues themselves would be in that whole list of general fund revenues, but we would still maintain the same individual account numbers, so you would be able to see what was taken in for, recreation, general income, and sponsorships and things like that. It would just sort of be folded back into the general fund. I was told at the beginning of this discussion about 3 years ago, there was a point in time, I guess, where the county actually provided some funding for our recreation department.
Up till 2002.
Mm-hmm. And as a result, they insisted that it be accounted for separately in order for them to see that we were spending the funds properly.
honestly, at that time, there were other ways to do it than making it an enterprise fund. You know, as he's already explained, the strict GASB definition of an enterprise fund really is something that operates as a business and raises sufficient money through user fees or other revenues to cover its operating expenses, and that's certainly not the case with recreation. We are going through an auditor. Go ahead.
Excuse me. In both your experiences coming from other municipalities, have you ever seen a recreation department function as an enterprise fund?
No, I haven't. And I've seen in some cases where it functioned as what's called a special revenue fund. A number of years ago, that was an option, and it would segregate it, and that way you could show the revenues and expenses separately in a fund, but not as an enterprise fund. Part of what prompted the discussion, if you look at this year's CAFR, because the recreation is an enterprise fund, when we budget to transfer just enough money to cover cash flow needs. In other words, revenues minus expenses, whatever the difference is, that's what the general fund transfers. When it's accounted for as an enterprise fund in the CAFR, it also has to bear things like depreciation expense, which is a non-cash expense, but very legitimate from an accounting standpoint. And as a result, at the end of last fiscal year, there was a $285,000 operating deficit, something in that neighborhood, and about a $200,000+ unrestricted net asset deficit on the books at the end of the year. That situation will only continue to get worse because of the accounting for it as an enterprise fund. So that's kind of part of it too. That negative number will just get worse because we don't transfer enough to cover the $300,000 a year in depreciation costs. And we also, up to this point in time, haven't really invested that much money in capital to overcome the fact that the value of the assets is continuing to decline net of depreciation. So
That's the same experience that I've had as well. One of the other things, when you typically have something in your general fund, that becomes your core services. You could look at it from a positive standpoint. Police is a core service of the city. Public Works is a core service. So that's, in essence, what you're saying to the taxpayers of the community. You're paying taxes for core services. You're paying fees for those enterprise funds or business that are standalone for a service that we are providing. We could stand or fall, we wouldn't fall without those enterprise funds, and they would sort of go to the side. But if they were, for example, like the electric and the potential of being sold. You wouldn't sell the police department unless you all know of a buyer.
Anybody have any?
The bottom line issue we may have is, we're going out this summer with an RFP for auditors, and if for some reason we end up with different auditors, certainly brand new ones coming in are going to look at that and say, how can you possibly categorize that as an enterprise fund? It doesn't meet the GASB definition. So I think what we concluded with the Finance Commission was we need to look at it and make some sort of a decision and not just keep doing the same thing like we have every year. We need to make some sort of an actual decision about how we want it to be, and hopefully one that we could sell to anyone who saw us account for it that way. So.
Well, I do have a question, actually. So if we have fundraising events different than Under the Oaks, where there's fees involved, if we have fundraising events where there's are donations to the rec department, if this is not an enterprise anymore, will those funds still be earmarked specifically for their use?
Absolutely, because how we account for them doesn't change the fact that if they were given for a specific purpose, then that's what we'd use them for. I mean, we always segregate donations from private sources, and we always have the ability to account for exactly what we received into those. And we can always create more line item numbers than are required in revenues if we want to track something separately. So we would have a recreation donation from private sources and good accounting of where the money came from. So absolutely.
What would help you? A motion by us to go from enterprise fund back into general revenue?
I think the way we left it with the Finance Commission was to give it some thought, and then as we move through the budget season, we'll be having our first budget workshops with council in July. That may be between now and then, thinking about all the pros and cons that they weigh in on it, and then also that you guys would do the same. So you don't have to decide right now, I guess is what we're saying.
I already know where I'd go, because
if you want to, then make a motion and a vote, please. But
we've been through this battle.
Yeah.
And it's been a battle sometimes.
If the motion was that you have no objection, we would pursue that again with the Finance Commission, because I think they would be the ones that would really help structure it. If you have objection to it, then we need to carry that forward too in our discussions with the Finance Commission.
I like your motion.
One thing I want to say, too, is that it's also important to remember when we were talking about this overall with the expenses and the revenues, why this, should also be in consideration is that you have the fountains, the playgrounds, the maintaining of those folks, as well as those things, as well as having those beaches guarded. And there's serious expense to that, and it's hard to make up for that expense. And I think that should also be part of your consideration, and I'll leave it back to you guys.
Well, I think
very
Cindy
serious
brought up,
budget.
I think the reason for the creation of an enterprise fund went back to when the county contributed the money. And that was over in 2002. So, from what I understand, there's no reason to even carry it anymore as an enterprise fund. So I'll make the motion of what you said, Jim.
We have no objection.
That we have no objection to the Finance Commission. I guess exploring and converting it back to the General Revenue Fund.
I don't want to make the motion for you, but I guess if you just go on record, you have no objection if the Recreation Department becomes a part of the general fund.
Sounds good.
I second it.
Okay. Any questions? Or anybody in the audience want to contribute to the discussion? All right, seeing as how there is none, I think on this we need a roll call.
Mrs. Denano?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Holton?
Yes.
Mrs. Burdick?
Yes.
And Chairman Yem?
Yes. Sorry to interrupt you, Rob.
Oh, that's great.
Chairman, I've done enough damage. I've got to go upstairs now.
All right, well, we're going to, I don't know if you heard, we're going to conclude today at 5 and then come back because we've got a lot more, I think, on this.
I understand. And the budget's going to be a big issue, and Cindy and Rob have worked out some ideas on how to present multiple pages, so we'll see how that
You
works.
have the date so we can plan?
Yeah, we're meeting with, to let you know, we're meeting with Jim the second week in June, and then the meeting with the council is going to be the third
AM or PM?
July
third week in
7th.
July.
July 7th?
Yes, that's with the council.
But not necessarily the Recreation Department. I'm sorry.
Right.
Do you have
Go
yours?
ahead.
There's a week of council workshops, so I'm not sure exactly which day the Recreation Department fund or the Recreation Fund falls on. There you go, right there.
July 10th looks like when, most likely that time period, July 10th.
Is that morning or afternoon?
The meeting starts at 9 a.m. on Thursday, so it's just a matter of what time the marina gets done, and then we're second in the list.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you're scheduled for the morning.
And the meeting with Jim, we're going to be meeting with Jim June 11th.
So we've got some time.
When's our meeting?
June.
June 10th?
Isn't it June? It's on the-
Right now, tentatively, it is July the 10th.
No, our meeting.
Our meeting
Which was the
is July the...
Oh, June.
June.
June 10th.
It's on the agenda.
June the
Okay.
10th. June the 10th.
The reason I'm asking is because I've got one issue that's going to involve you. So I'll just have to wait. I'm trying to get your timeline next meeting.
Okay.
Do you want to just, I was going to say, do you want to just meeting with the three of us? On your-
No, because I think it involves the whole commission.
Yeah, whatever you all put together and any message you want to send, if I'm not here, just send it through Rob and he and I'll sit down and fight over it and then,
Well, this is kind of strategic planning, so
okay. We are looking for a real 5-year capital plan, so we're trying to put it into real numbers so we can phase that in and actually get accomplishments on an annually as opposed to a wish list that nobody can ever fund, so.
yeah. So if we could get your attendance and Cindy's. I mean, if you can work it into the next meeting, because this is certainly going to get into the long-range planning.
That'll be fine.
And I think
We'll try to make it next
it
meeting.
would benefit us if we could have both of you in attendance.
Yeah. 5 o'clock on these days, I happen to have a Main Street meeting I got to go to, so
No, I understand.
if we can work out,
We'll work it
I
out
could
next
start
week.
at 4 o'clock. If you can get it done in an hour, that would be great.
I think so.
Yep.
And Rob and I have already had some extensive discussions about his 5-year capital needs, and he and I are in the process of laying that out in the 5-year plan and looking for funding sources. It's something to keep in mind when it comes to capital. We do have other funding sources for that are part of the city's infrastructure money that wouldn't necessarily directly impact the amount that the general fund contributes to recreation. So that's what we're trying to work out right now.
Well, I'm
so by
aware
your
of
next
that.
meeting, I would think we'd have a draft of that together, and that
Yeah.
would be something you could look at.
Yeah, I'm aware of some of your discussion.
Okay.
So, but I know it's going to take more than 15 minutes.
Absolutely. So,
To actually get into real strategic planning.
right. So whenever your next meeting is, we should have a draft of that available for your discussion.
It's going to be important for you to be here.
I will make pick a time that can work. Okay.
All right, yes,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks. I'm gonna.
Again, sorry for the interruption.
No, as Cindy said, that we've met. One of the things that we did was we put together 3 different budgets, and the reasoning for the 3 budgets was last year when we went before council. There were 3 items that they wanted us to come back and bring forward to them for at least some thoughts. And the 3 things that they looked at were some of our facilities. They looked at some of our facilities, our recreation facilities, and saw that they're starting to look tired. In addition, the 2 other things that they were looking at were that I know that they were with revenue goals that each year we were always coming up a little bit short on the revenue side, so that was another one. And then the last one was assessing the hours at Humston Beach, the lifeguard hours at Humston Beach. So what was asked of us for this year's budget was to present a no change budget, but also to put together maybe 2 other budgets. One being if you really could have what you really think you need, you would put that under Addendum A and under Addendum B. This is how I interpreted it. And then under Addendum B, how I interpreted it was, if you can't have it, but maybe you can eventually transition to Addendum A, how would you do that? So what we do is we do the line item budget, and in the line item budget, we made those adjustments and put those out in the 3 different budgets. We went with one that was flat, we went with one that was intermediate, and then we went with one that was the overall. We know that the budgets are going to be tight. We know that all the departments are going to be looking for the same thing. We're not sure what property values are going to be. We're not sure what the future has to hold. You have some external items and impediments that could be out there. So these are things that are all going to be weighed. In addition to those 3 separate budgets for the line item, as Cindy had mentioned, we also sat down and went through what we considered capital items that really need some attention. And we put those out. We put those out in a 5-year capital plan, but we also looked at, when asking the staff, we also looked at things that may be long-term, 6 to 10 years, or maybe even longer than that. And I think that's one of the things that Dick was alluding to, possibly. So what we found when we started putting together the 5-year capital of items that really need some attention, things like the Leisure Square roof and community center and the siding in the community center and lifeguard stuff, Riverside tennis with courts some courts still needing to be resurfaced. It wound up in a 5-year plan just about $1 million, just a little more than $1 million. Now, I will say that the estimates may be high for what we had, but I still think you're looking at pretty serious amount from $750,000 to $1 million. One thing to remember from the last I would say, the last 7 years is that, it's basically been, we've been asked to hold the line. And, I mean, that's the way it is. We've had budget cuts where my estimate is that our cuts have been, in our department, have been about $800 to $1 million. And we've also were asked to hold the line. So this was an idea, an opportunity for us to present and see if some of the things that we've seen that we've cut, we may need to take care of, and we presented those into the budget.
All right, what can we do in 10 minutes?
What would you like? You want to start with line items, or probably line items? If you guys have questions regarding the line items.
Everybody had an opportunity to review this?
Where are we looking exactly? What page do you want us to look at?
I know it might be some small print, but it would be the one that has the budget worksheet, and it has the income, salaries, professional service.
We got page 1 in our budget.
Page 1.
In our budget worksheet.
Right, and then 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3, which would all look like this. And
Okay.
all have these lines on them. And Rita, thank you for that, for boxing it. That was really nice that you did that.
Let's just work through what we can, and then, we'll stop around 5.
When you take a look at, let's just go with the recreation fund revenue. When you look at that first sheet, you'll see the headings of recreation department income, concessions and rentals, fundraiser revenue, janitorial services, so on and so forth. And then when you scroll out to the right, when you look out to the right, you'll see that the 13 and 14 expected, that's our budget for this year that we were budgeted for. And then to the right of that is the no change, pretty much the no change budget, where we don't make money changes to it. Addendum A again is the one where we think that we probably goal-wise we may come in a little bit lighter, but it is our goal to try and make that 396 that we have budgeted for 14-15. Addendum A would make us feel a little bit more comfortable, like that might be more of the hit number that we would have. Addendum B would be the intermediate amount that we hope to make. Does that make sense? Now,
Why do you think it's going to be lower when we raise the rates?
What we found is that when we raise the rates, we expect to make some money back. If you look at 2012-13, you see that on the far left?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's what we made. When we start looking at 6%, let's just say 6%. Well, 6% of that is roughly $20,000, okay, in that neighborhood. That's addendum B. If you look off to the far right, you see that? Mm-hmm. That's kind of intermediate. I feel pretty good about that, but I also think that if we're looking at 3 or 4%, then we're in addendum A. Okay? We've put in for 396. The biggest thing we're hoping for is that we do make the extra money from raising the rates, but also we have folks who possibly generate revenues, the beach umbrellas and the things, fundraising, if we can get some fundraising again, and also even the hot dog vendor, where we can generate a little bit more revenue where that can make it. We could make the 396. Don't get me wrong, we could make these numbers, but it's got to be right. We've got to make it, and it's got to happen. It's got to be right for it to happen. Moving down to concession and rentals, that's really not ours. That's Seaside Grill. To let you know, that revenue is generated through Seaside Grill. So that's something that's handled through finance. The rentals are the facilities, with money we generate for the facilities, but also for the pavilions. In addition, that's also over at Leisure Square Rentals. We generate money for that. And also we generate some money in the rentals for stage and bleachers. Last year we brought in $125,000. We actually feel a lot more confident that we're going to bring in probably 8 to 10% more this year coming. And we're right now through the 13-14 halfway mark. We're at 69. We're hoping that we're going to be able to double that amount. Again, but that will still fall a little short where we're budgeted for this year. You'll see the next line below is that fundraiser revenue. That was for the event in December. That's what we generated in revenue. We, of course, had expenses. That's separate line items and things. But one of the things that's been worked out with the finance department, which is really a good thing, is that they actually are breaking out what you generated for your revenue for that fundraiser. They're also breaking out what your expenses for that fundraiser. And then if there's any items that are costed are a cost into our regular budget, i.e. overtime, things like that, we can extract that out. Janitorial services are what is done at our different facilities. That's revenue generated through renters coming in and renting the facilities. They pay for our janitorial services at our facilities. Miscellaneous is just what it is. And the contributions from the general fund. The contributions from the general fund is the money that taxpayers pay in for our budget. The recreation sponsorship is, again, what we generate in sponsorship. We expect to make our budgeted amount. Hopefully we make more than that. I think we will.
So why is your janitorial declining 2015?
I'll tell you a good reason why. We negotiated out with a new janitorial service, and actually that's not true. What I was trying to get at. That's a good question. We haven't had as much revenue probably from our rentals, from the janitorial services, from our larger buildings, I guess. That's pretty small, 3635. We made 9235 a year ago, so I was thinking on the expense side.
Yeah, it's almost a third.
Yeah, but janitorial, to let you know, janitorial services is a wash account, as an FYI to you, and in fact, it generates a little bit more money for us in our revenue side than expense. That's actually tied in with our operating expenses. If you get to page 2 and you look at janitorial.
I mean, are your rentals
services
down? It would be tied to rentals, right?
It would, but the one thing I was going to say is if you look at page 2 of 3, because it's tied together with that, you see the operating expenses and janitorial services, and it says janitorial services rentals. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down. Those two are tied together. You see the expense side?
Okay.
So in other words, we're generating revenue from that account is what we're doing. But yes, it is kind of low for what we're doing. I could drop them both down and they would still a wash. It's a wash account.
So as far, let me go back up to fundraiser revenue. You know what 2013 was.
Right.
Or 13, 14.
Right.
But
We're not sure what 14, 15 has to offer us yet.
any idea? I mean,
No, we don't have anything planned.
Not yet.
You know.
Okay. All right, so whatever shows up, shows up.
Yeah, Rob, can I go back to the janitorial thing for a minute? Year to date, the expenses have been $9,400 and something, but yet we have only taken in year to date, $3,000.
Go two down. You see the 2 down? It says 1906 right below it. You see you're on the expense
Services
side.
and rentals?
Yes,
Oh,
those
okay.
are the 2 tied. The one you're talking about is all of our buildings. The janitorial, there's 2 different janitorial services.
Okay,
The ones for like cleaning Leisure Square
Right.
and Riverside Tennis and our community center, that's janitorial service. And then janitorial services rental is what the renters are paying.
Special, yeah.
Right. So we're generating revenue is what we're, a little more revenue than expense, actually.
I got you.
Performing arts costumes, that's was something that we generate revenue. Folks pay for, help pay for our costumes for shows and things like that. They usually pay a $5 or $10 fee for the costumes, and then we generate.
So you get a lot of that at Christmas.
Yes, we get a lot of that at Christmas and the circus. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It looks like your recreation sponsorship, you will actually,
Sponsorship, we're doing really well right now.
Yeah.
We're halfway through, and we're doing really well.
you
And
almost met your,
we expect to generate
go.
some more out of that. Okay,
It's 5 o'clock.
there you go. Through the revenue. We'll
We
get
got
to
through the
we'll
first
get-
page.
we'll get to the expense side, and there's a lot of it. So,
yeah, I think when we get into your A, B, and C,
yeah.
all right. Very good. Old business we have on recreation directors matters.
No, I will tell you, I commend, I don't know if you all had an opportunity to do it, but I do commend Eric Menger and everybody who worked on that show, these shows this weekend. That was phenomenal with the Blue Angels. That was fantastic. I commend all of them for what they did, and all those volunteers and everybody who helped out.
A lot of work.
Great job and a lot of work. That was tremendous. No, I don't really have anything.
Okay, chairman's matters. I concur with what you said about the air show. I've been to a lot of air shows, and I think for this community to pull it off the way they did was exemplary. Now the question is, who can they get to follow up next year?
Right, that's a tough act to follow.
Members matters.
It can wait. If
You
want
took
me
care of
to
mine.
Until next month, I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. We're going to wrap it up.
No, I didn't have any.
What's the difference between a party and a party with alcohol? When I know some people get license review as a party, but they still bring in alcohol.
Okay, if they are, all right, many people who have parties won't have alcohol at all. The ones who have alcohol are not supposed to have alcohol in the parks unless they are renting the Grand Pavilion or Picnic Pavilion, or if they have special permission through the city manager and council.
Okay.
I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Greg?
No, once we get through the financial end of it.
All right, then we're adjourned.